Alright, let's get right into the business. So I have this canvas of about 2000 by 2000 pixel, or sometimes 3000 by 3000. So I will just paint the sky. Let's see, I'm gonna have to like zoom out first, and let's see here. Just gonna use a big stroke of blue, just trying to get the sky going here. Okay. Usually it will be lighter on as it get closer to the horizontal line, and as it go higher up in the sky it will be darker or deeper blue. So now I'm establishing the sky, basically a skyline. If you look at all the landscape photograph or something, you will see that along the horizontal line will be the lightest point, and it will usually give you a sense of depth if you go from the highest top being the darker color to the closest to the horizon will be the lightest color. Alright, now we're adding some kind of snow smoke. I like painting the scene that feels cold, because I think it has a lot of contrast. I think that's why I like it. I'm not sure why. I don't like painting jungle green or forest as much. I do like painting them, but I think for me my comfort zone is always in the snow. Maybe I'm a start, I don't know, but I just like painting snow and I feel pretty comfortable with it, and I go pretty quick usually. So now I make a shape of the first boulder or the first cliff of the kind of like the mountain, and then I make another shape using lasso tool. Also, both of them are using lasso tool to create the background. So the first one, the first shape that I put on is kind of establish the mid-ground a little bit, and now I'm establishing the background or the further away part. So usually I'll try to establish 3 different depths. First would be foreground, then you're dealing with the mid-ground, which usually most of the action happen in between foreground and mid-ground, and sometimes it can happen in the background also, like the secondary action or something. But usually you want them to focus, you want to put your focal point or whatever content you want to focus on in the mid-ground. Alright, now I'm making another shape for the foreground. So as you can see, the value of this shape they have pretty much the same color and hue, or temperature also, but what difference is that the closest one will be the darkest, and the further away one, the furthest one will be the lightest. And as far as depth go, that's as far as depth, as far as if you want to establish depth, this is the way to do it. And usually you are not yet, like in this way, you're not yet including directional lighting. What you're including, you're just including the ambient, which is kind of just showing the form. If you include directional lighting afterward, it might not have the same like type of arrangement. But this is, you want to just establishing the base of it, then this is the way to do it. Dark and then lighter and lighter as it goes away. Now I'm using shape tool. If you look at your toolbox on the back, it's like right below the text tool and the move tool. And I will have one video in this Patreon term to show you how to make this shape tool. And if you don't know how to do this, you will have to go watch it, because it's really important. And as we go on, we are going to use a lot of shape tool from now on. So I haven't been using a lot of them as much in the previous Patreon video, because I use a lot of focus pretty much on the texture brush. And you can easily make this shape tool from anything basically, you know, like the texture from nature or texture from pretty much animals or type of water. There's all kind of texture. Yeah, so now I'm trying to like getting this mountain range shape in the back, but I don't want it to be too much detail like what I did earlier, so I changed the shape tool here a little bit. And you can keep stretching and pulling and pushing, and the shape tool will still like it's vector based, so it doesn't get pixelated. That's what I'm saying. Now I'm going back to paint the snow, and the snow is kind of down below on the floor right behind, well, the base snow is right behind every the mid ground and the foreground. And now I'm trying to kind of getting more value on the foreground. Maybe I should make another layer of snow. So now I'm just trying to get the shape on the bottom part of the background or the back part of the mountain, right, and trying to add some snowfall onto the object a little bit. Maybe some snow hanging of some of the plane up there, and just trying to get the feel of how thick the snow is on some part of the border. All right, now let's see here. I'm looking for something. Oh, and don't forget to save. Yeah. All right. So I'm just saving it as Speedpaint Dragon Breath or something. All right. Now we're just gonna do the same thing to the border on the midground using shape. So now I'm actually adding a well, actually I'm using a clipping mask on top of this shape border, right? Now making a selection tool on that that part of the selection on top, so I can paint inside the shape of the shape tool that I paint. So I rasterize the shape tool so that I can make a selection of the shape tool, and then I paint over the shape and with different colors, so it became like, you know, the light brown with the white, and the one on the bottom which has the same color still remain the same. So I'm just kind of adding detail on top of those lines basically, because I start adding more snow on the bottom as I see the snow that I paint early on the bottom, and then I thought like the top part of it should have some of the white. So but then sometimes I tend to overdo it, add a little bit too much white up there. So I'm just gonna kind of get a little less, but maybe some of them has more. Yeah, so I was just kind of trying out things at this point, but then I thought the snow early on was a bit too much, so I reduced the amount of snow and then add it back on, and using different type of brush and try to see if I could get the snow to sort of excuse me, have some dusty snow or leftover snow, or some sort of dirt rock on top of the dusty something. All right, I can't think of the words. I'm sorry. Yeah, just kind of like trying to get the texture to make it look a little more organic, basically. Now I'm gonna add more shapes here. So now but it has the same color, so it doesn't show up. I have to pick a slightly different color, like either a little bit darker or a little bit lighter. You can pick a lot darker, it will show up a lot more, and then you can tweak a color later. So now I'm using the shape tool again on this midsection boulder. I've been going on for like 10 minutes and I'm starting to lose my voice. Alright, so I'm now tweaking the color and the value of this boulder a little bit. And I'm using clipping mask again. So the clipping mask, you just kind of make a new layer on top of the layer that we want to make a clipping mask to, and just hold Alt. Then you get a clipping mask. And I paint on top of this layer itself after I rasterize it. And it became, make a selection on it, and I can erase it, or I can paint inside it of this shape tool. Basically, you know, just make a selection of it and paint over it. Alright, now you can add, I'm adding a little bit of snow on the bottom part of this rock. Some snow. All right, so now I'm adding a bit of snow on top. And, you know, some texture of a bit noisy white, basically, to give it some grimy texture and make it a little more organic. And sometimes it could be delicious. So now, you only have a few shapes at this point, but in the package you will get more shape from me, because I've been continuously made more shapes. Yeah, and now I'm making another shape on the foreground. And there we go. So now we have the mountain shape. Cool, huh? And as you go and making more concept art, you should continuously create more shape, more brushes. For brushes, like a lot of time, you kind of build it along as you go. And for shapes, same. But eventually, you're gonna come back and only pick the select few to be your go-to brushes and shape eventually. Now I'm adding more color and value onto this shape. I'm just playing around with it and see what I could do with it, right? And when I said I play around with it, it doesn't mean that I'm just kind of mindlessly painting all this. You have to think about where the lights, where the shadow, and how would it sort of work. Yeah, if you paint the lighter value, you probably have to figure out how to make it work. If you paint it on a higher plane, or the plane that's facing the light, you're painting the darker value, you probably have to paint on the plane that facing downward or away from the light. And then I add some of the blue, and the blue doesn't work, so I kind of have to take it away because it doesn't look good. So you have to know, when you try things, you have to know what looks good and what don't, like what doesn't add up and what will contribute. You see what I mean? So, all right, let's. All right, now I'm just trying to add a few more not texture, but I'm painting on this shape, trying to add some snow, and maybe I could apply a little more color onto it, which if I were to add more color, I have to either select something closer to blue or something that's closer to brown, so it would be sort of a not kind of complementary still scheme to be where cool and warm, trying to balance in cool and warm basically. So let's see here, I'm adding more snow, then I'm going down to the, so as you can see I'm moving around with 2 different layer masks here, adding more dark brown, and I will probably adding a little more of the light saturated brown there. Alright, so then I'm adding a little bit of color dodge to bring out some of the different variation of the same color that's already there. So just try to bring it out a little bit. Color dodge is a pretty useful tool for if you're trying to bring out the saturation and popping out the color a little bit. So I've been using that a lot recently, the past year or so. And now I am going to add a dragon. So I'm trying to pick the right color scheme, or the right color for a dragon. I think the easiest one would make it, I'll make it more kind of like black, but then have a little bit of blue hint on it. And I will have to probably use a reference here to get the pose and everything, right? So you can look around the internet and just try to find the reference that would fit into your scene here. And if the pose are slightly different, it's fine. You can try to see the angle that, like, what's more important is the angle of, let's just say in this one I'm looking for the reference that has the angle of the head, that what I'm looking for, like, you know, I want it to face forward basically, and the pose is not I could kind of tweak it a little bit because the mountain is going to block it, right? So I'm not really strict on the pose of what I'm looking for, but more so on the angle of the head. So I'm gonna show you the reference I use here. Let's see, drag it out there. Alright, so we're just gonna follow this reference in terms of the direction of the head, and whatever you find, it's going to have to kind of fit into your composition. So if, like, most of the time I'll try to get the composition and everything kind of in place before I look for the reference. Usually I will look for the overall general reference for the board, right? So I already have some idea in mind, and I get the reference board of, like, okay, what is the mountain's gonna look like, what's the dragon's gonna look like. But sometime if I'm doing speed painting and I don't have the luxuries of time to prepare, then I'm just gonna usually go for something that I already know, or something that I'm familiar with, like snow and the mountain, because I paint that a lot, so I don't have to look for a lot of reference. But if I have to paint a cathedral or some kind of a building that I'm not familiar with, some kind of different architecture, then, or some kind of creature like dragon, if I paint it on a different angle, I might not have to use a reference at all. But if I'm using certain angle, like in this one, right, I'm gonna have like the front angle, which is pretty difficult if you're trying to get the dragon to facing front forward. You don't usually see it in that angle. It's a lot easier to do a quarter view or the side view, but in the front of situation is a bit tricky. So I am going to have to kind of look around for the reference for that. So in here, I'm not gonna make it exactly like what I have in the reference. I'm just gonna use the reference for kind of like a starting point, right? So an anchor point, so I know where the mouth, the upper jaw and the lower jaw would be, and the overall look, overall feel of the head when it's pushing forward. So I just want to give a general idea, basically. It's kind of like, you know, if you want to find a pose that are really good, then you're going to have to find a reference for that also. So looking for good reference is also part of your job if you are a concept artist. You can't just kind of pulling something out of your butt, because sometimes there are some detail that you might be missing. And when you have a reference, it's kind of refreshing your memory. If it is the stuff that you already know, you're gonna learn more, and you'll be able to kind of see more. It's like, oh, I haven't seen that before, and it's always been there. In a lot of cases, because if you've been painting for a long time, sometimes you get too familiar with the subject, and then you think you know everything, but then you don't, because sometimes you always miss something. In general, reference are good. You always have to use them. That's the difference between copying and using reference. So you can, when you're doing a copy of photograph, that's what we call study. But when you're using reference for your concept art, that's what we call creative use of reference, because you're going to have to kind of put it in a different composition, and basically you're going to rearrange a lot of things. And there's also different type of concept that you can use photo stock from your company that they provided you with. Let's just say if you're making a movie and they have a different photo stock of an actors, or different pose of a different actor that are in the film, and you have a different location, then you might have to kind of like make a mock-up or a key frame shot for that particular new scene or new composition that you are going to make. Then that is also another type of concept art that we call photo batch. So that's a different way of doing things. Usually the pre-concept is basically composition, and this is what speed painting is part of that practice that you can get better at trying to find a new composition and practicing your speed and your ideas, trying to put it into an image of whatever the words or the phrase or the paragraph that they throw at you, right? So in this speed painting, usually I go to Speed Paint on Facebook, and usually they'll provide you with a topic every morning, and then you just do a painting based on that, which is a pretty good way to practice, because basically it's the same thing as if you're in the studio, they'll give you a paragraph or a sentence to describe the scene, or maybe the writer will come down himself and just explain to you like, hey, this is what we want, this is what's going to happen, and things like that, right? So, all right, now I'm just kind of slowly painting this dragon, and it probably doesn't look exactly like the reference, but close enough, and I just want to get the idea across. Basically, if you can communicate, that's good enough. You can make it as detailed and as pretty as you want. It's up to you with your own style, but usually I just get the general idea across. So that's the dragon breathing on the snow and kind of like blowing the snow out. He doesn't breathe fire yet, but he's just breathing, or maybe he's just kind of breathing out and trying to like sucking all the air in again and breathe fire. Just maybe the anticipation move or something. I don't know. Just the idea. And then I'll probably put another one of the character. Maybe I'm not sure if I'm gonna have time, because I only have 5 more minutes left for this speed painting. So I'm trying to put like maybe a warrior or a princess or some kind of a person in the front running away from the dragon, or there's as many ways to do. You can like make a character facing the dragon and putting up a fight, or you can make a character running away from the dragon. So, but within 5 minutes, I don't have a lot of room to maneuver, basically. So I'm just gonna make something easy. But what's more important in here is just your silhouette has to read. If your silhouette is a male or female, that's one important thing. You have to be able to convey to the audience that this is a female character, or this is a male character, this is a male running away, or this is a male putting up a fight, or this is a female defiance putting up a fight. Something like that is very important. In you trying to communicate. Design is one thing. Design is secondary, also important, but secondary to communication. So you are trying to talk to the audience basically through this image. So you always have to think, and assuming the audience doesn't know anything about this image, what you're trying to do is you're trying to say something like, hey, this is what happened here and here. Just imagine yourself as a writer translating a writing into an image and trying to put your image to your audience that this is what the writer is saying. So the better you can translate that, the more successful your concept design or concept art is going to be. It's basically like illustration. But illustration is kind of similar, but illustration is more like you can have more time to pretty up your image. But concept art, you just kind of like you get a little bit more time than storyboarding, but you just have to kind of put as many or as much detail as you can within the time frame available to you to work on something, right? So usually, I think typically you can possibly put 1 to, it depends on your speed, 1 to 5 concept art per day a piece for each concept artist. Some are faster than others, and some are a little more refined than others. So it depends. Like I got a lot of question on that also, like how many pieces you want to be able to produce per day. So it depends on what your assignment is, like how they want the scene to be portrayed. Do you want a lot more detail? Is it architecture, or is it nature in the forest? Like usually the nature scene are a lot easier and faster to do because you just have to find a composition, and usually the perspective are involved, but they are not as heavy as when you're doing the scene that are in the city that have a lot of architectural reference. Let's just say the city of Montenegro, or the city of London, or the city of Tokyo. So those kind of environment are going to take up a lot of your time because you're going to have to go in and do a bunch of research and try to make it look like London, right? So if the London is just going to be totally different than Tokyo, even though there are some architectural similarity in terms of technicality or engineering, but the aesthetic or the location or the color or the palette or everything is just going to be different. So it's going to take a lot of time to trying to define or trying to communicate from your image that this is London. So you're going to have to do a lot of research. So yeah, that's the gist of it. Anyways, we're almost done here. So I'm just add a little more smoke or cloud, and I add basically the girl running away with just the gesture move right there. And in the end, I'm just adding a little bit of snowfall, and that should be sufficient enough for this.